Hi, everyone. So I think we're live now. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes. I think we're 2 minutes ahead of time. So we're currently live on Facebook, but we'll be officially live in 2 minutes.
Oh, hello, Coco. Where's everyone tuning in from? We got Jenny from Bay Area. Evelyn from Los Angeles. Oh, hello. Hi, Tita. From Manila.
Wow. We have so many people.
Philippines. Edie from Taiwan.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Such an international event.
I know. Yeah, so if you're just joining now, and if you missed Steffie's comment, would love for you guys to say hi in the comments in the chat box and say where you're tuning in from. We'll be starting shortly.
Yeah. Got a bunch of California people. Caitlin and Nye. Oh, from Australia, Joanna.
Wow.
Thanks so much. Oh, hello, Gigi.
Steffie, you're so popular.
I haven't seen these names in so long. It's so good.
Aww, that's so sweet. Garrett from Tokyo, lots of Tokyo people.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
This is the first international event for Asian.
We typically do international events, but because our panelists come from all areas and different parts of the world, I think that's why we have so many international people.
I think in terms of Startup Lady, this is our first time kind of reaching outside of Japan. So super exciting for us.
Erica, hi.
Hello, Garrett. Yvonne from Los Angeles.
Yeah, so if you're tuning in from Facebook Live as well, feel free to leave in the comments box of where you're tuning in from. All right. We have a lot of attendees so far.
Oh.
Okay, do you think we should give it like 1 more minute, Steffie, and then we can get started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's.
Liza from Walnut Creek, hello.
Hello, Shireen from Dallas.
Hi, Shireen from Dallas. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining, feel free to say hi in the chat box and type in where you're streaming in from. And I think we can get started at 6:03.
Hello, Shireen.
All right, so at 6:03, I think we can get started. Alexander from Osaka, Japan, hello. Tiffany Huang from Pasadena.
So many California folks here.
All right, well, for the people who are just trickling in now, as you can see, a lot of people are still joining in, so feel free to enter in the chat box where you're streaming in from. And we are very excited to get started. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Maggie, and I am the co-founder of Asian Hustle Network. And we're very excited to be hosting this Breaking Barriers Women Empowering Women panel discussion tonight. And I'm very excited to be partnering up with Steffie Harner, the founder of Startup Lady Japan. A little bit about Asian Hustle Network. So we are a Facebook community of 65,000 members with the mission to uplift and empower Asian entrepreneurs and professionals globally. And some of our missions are to push more Asians to be in mainstream media and for them to rise in corporate and investment ladders. So we're very excited to be hosting this event with everyone tonight. And just some context on, how I met Steffie. I met her through Asian Hustle Network, and I was just so drawn and inspired with her mission with Startup Lady Japan to promote gender equality and support aspiring female entrepreneurs. So I will let Steffie take it away and give her introduction.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for that lovely intro. So hello, everyone. I am Steffie Harner, tuning in from Tokyo. I am a co-founder of Startup Lady Japan. We're a freelance entrepreneur community. We offer mentorship, access to co-working spaces, and most importantly, a platform for females and those who identify as non-binary to promote their personal hustle here in Japan. And so 2 years, we've been hosting female entrepreneur events, speaking events in person, but now in 2020, in the age of coronavirus, we've moved completely online. So as Asian Hustle, I've been part of the Asian Hustle Network community for quite a while now, and I'm just constantly inspired by all of the posts that come in. And so inspired, I decided to share my story with Startup Lady. And I think as Maggie, you and I, like two people who are really involved with online communities, we really understand the power it has in connecting people with the same mission. So with that, yeah, I have not met Maggie in person, but we've been just meeting every week for the past few weeks to prepare this event for you. And I hope this special female-led international live event is something that you've been excited about as well. So, AHN Startup Lady, we give a platform to underrepresented and underprivileged groups in our communities, whether that's in the Bay Area, US, Japan. In that we can share our current successes, but I think most importantly, our failures, because that is also a source of inspiration, and that is a way of relating and connecting to others that also might relate to your struggle. But Maggie and I have been talking a little bit about how it's kind of a challenge to get women in particular to speak up in these groups. And so we thought, why not just showcase some of the awesome women who are already in this community? They're doing awesome things in their field, not only to be a role model, but to also demystify the entrepreneur journey. We often think that making it as an entrepreneur is a point A to point B. I'm not there yet and I made it. But that is not true. It's an ongoing process, and there are challenges. Progress is not linear, and so it's okay to share your failures, your learnings, and where you're at right now. And by hosting this event today, we're really inviting more people, more women to speak up and share your story. Right, Maggie?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo everything you said, Steffie. Thank you so much for, just speaking so eloquently on that. And I agree with everything. I think that, we tend to have this misconception that women can't speak up for themselves, whether that be in the workforce or, in your entrepreneurship journey. But that's not true at all. I think that we need to break those barriers, and just wanted to give some statistics when we first started Asian Hustle Network. So when we had first started in November of 2019, I think when we had reached about 10,000, 20,000 members in, I would say January of 2020, we had a men to women ratio of 70% to 30% respectively. And we knew that that was obviously an issue. And I think that men are more vocal about, being an entrepreneur, the successes that they've had, all the wins that they've had, and we wanted to change that, obviously. So we started bringing on more female moderators to our moderating group. We started encouraging and empowering more women to share their stories. We started hosting more women empowerment events, much like this one that we're having today. And based on those actions that we've had in Asian Hustle Network, I'm really proud to say that today we have a 46 to 54% between women to men ratio, respectively. So we're heading in the right direction, but we obviously still have a lot of work to do. But I just want to share that milestone with you guys, and we're very excited to be heading into this direction where we can empower more women voices and women entrepreneurs in our community. And I always think that if we don't empower ourselves and empower women in our networks, then who will do it for us, and we have to speak for ourselves. We have to, use our voices. And I'm just very excited to be, having three incredibly talented and, skilled panelists, women speakers on our panel today, including Steffie. So 4 incredibly talented women. And with that, I will be more than happy to bring it back to Steffie to introduce our speakers.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie. So you are also one of these women that it's so inspiring. And so, thank you for putting this together. So let's divert the spotlight to the stars of the show, the panelists as well. We have an awesome lineup tuning in from Tokyo, from Utah, and San Francisco, but I'm actually going to pass it over to do a little self-introduction. Yan?
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming today. My name is Yan. I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm the CTO of a software engineering bootcamp in Tokyo called Code Chrysalis. A bit of background about myself. I was not a software engineer at all and never thought I could be one. I started my career in finance as a trader, really didn't like that, and ended up getting out and changing my career into software engineering. And I got really interested in education because I had a lot of imposter syndrome being so new to the industry. So I was supplementing every weekend by offering and volunteering to teach things that I didn't know, so that I had to, pressure myself to learn more. And one thing led to another. I ended up starting a coding bootcamp in the Middle East. And then about 3 years ago, started Code Chrysalis here in Japan. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yan. So yeah, Yan is actually a mentor and friend of mine, and she's actually the one who inspired me to get into software engineering myself. So thank you so much, Yan. Let's pass it over to Christina.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And hey, everyone. It's really nice to see you all here, and welcome from all over the world. I hope everyone's staying safe tonight or this morning or wherever you are. So I'm Christina Chi. I started a hedge fund about 8 or 9 years ago called Dome Yard. I've actually worked in Japan as well, by the way. So interned in Japan, was in finance as well. Had an interesting, up and down experience from that, and decided why not start my own hedge fund from that experience. Dome Yard itself, we've traded this year, the most we traded was $7.1 billion per day. So I'm really proud of how our team has grown over many years now, and where we've gotten today. It really does feel like achieving a really cool dream, and having that come true is really empowering, but also it's really ups and downs. So in Asian Hustle Network, I do post a lot about my bad days as well. But yeah, so currently I am working on another company called Data Bento, which offers market data mainly for quants and high frequency traders. So it's really nice to see you all here tonight, and looking forward to having a great discussion.
Thank you so much, Christina. Yeah, definitely need to share the ups and the downs. And now we're moving on to Anya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anya. I'm based in San Francisco. In the last 15 years career in the US, I'm originally from Taiwan, born and raised there, and moved to States a while ago. Last few years, we're mostly been leading product management team and also leading growth marketing team in the Silicon Valley. I help Facebook to build Facebook shopping, Instagram shopping, and also was at eBay and Target, Sears before in the retail and e-commerce space. So I recently started my own startup in the artificial intelligence space. So I'm a really nascent entrepreneur and have a lot to learn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. So just wanted to remind you guys, if you guys are in the Zoom, if you guys have any questions, remember to ask them in the Q&A box. If you look at the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window, you can see a box for chat for any like comments that you have. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a box for Q&A. So if you have any questions, click on the Q&A box to ask those questions. Also, if you're streaming in from Facebook Live, feel free to ask any questions that you may have under the comment section, and we'll be funneling those questions into the Zoom as well. And if you have a question for a particular panelist, make sure you add their name to your question. So with that, I will let Steffi to kick off.
What Maggie said, send us your questions, everyone. All right, well, why don't we get this topic discussion started? So we have about 30 minutes for this part, and then we'll open up for Q&A afterwards. So I'm gonna try to ask the panelists if we can keep our answers to around 5 minutes, but just let it flow naturally. So let's start off. So Yan, as a friend and mentor, we deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, I think in tech and as software engineers. And so how do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, imposter syndrome, I think, is just natural. It's just the natural, negative voice in our head. And there, in some positive ways, it keeps us humble and it keeps us, I think, hustling, right? Because there's always that voice saying that we're not good enough. For how I deal with imposter syndrome, I think I just accept it. I accept it and I let it, I give it some time to talk sometimes, I let it talk, I let it go its way, but then I'm not afraid to talk back. And I think that's really important to counter every, negative voice with and trying to find something positive to counter that. And I also don't try to let it get in the way. The way I view, whenever there's something challenging happening and there's this imposter syndrome voice happening, usually I feel like if I don't try at that challenge, if you don't try something, if you don't ask for something, to me, that's an automatic loss, right? Without trying, you've automatically lost. And there's really, in many ways, nothing to lose if you don't try. So I think, the imposter syndrome is a necessary part of just life and being human, right? If we didn't have it, I think we would all just be egotistical and narcissistic, right? But the imposter syndrome, just give it some space, give it some time, some give yourself a few minutes every day to just feel really crappy and then get going, find something to replace it.
Yeah, definitely. I can learn a lot from that as well. I think as someone who deals with a lot of imposter syndrome as a software engineer and as a female entrepreneur, it's just letting it talk is not something, talking back to it is something that I have to work on, I feel like. What are some of the things that you say to yourself?
The imposter. Oh, of course. Today, being on the same panel with Christina and Anya, who are just so phenomenally, phenomenally successful. I think, looking at my own story, I'm oh man, I'm not running a hedge fund. I don't have a book, and thinking of all the things that I could be doing. I think I hear myself, tell me that a lot. And also just, sometimes feeling bad about taking a break and watching Netflix. But I think, I kind of have to accept that I can't be doing everything. And I have to be, happy with the progress that I am doing and the things that I'm, that I'm personally good at or that make me feel happy, and not to compare myself with others. I think that focus on what makes you happy, how you feel like you can make an impact in your community and the world, that's what I tell myself to get myself out of that, imposter mindset.
Yeah, it's really important just to give yourself breaks. And I think in comparing to other people, it's like a natural human habit to do that. But I think definitely just finding inspiration rather than, feeling oh, why am I not doing that? And we don't have to do everything too, I feel like we think that we need to do it all, but we should just be doing the things that the goals that we have and the things that we know that we're good at.
Exactly. Yeah, like ultimately I am me. Like I cannot be Christina. I cannot be Anya. I cannot be Steffi. I can't be Maggie. And also like if I try to, like if you try to be just like someone, like you'll never live up to them, right? And it'll always be like this shadow that you're creating. So, you know, the best thing that you can do is just try to figure out how to be yourself.
Yeah. I think that's all part of being authentic. All right, let's move to our next question, Yan.
Sure.
Right.
Oh man. How can we create, yeah. Sorry.
How can we create a space, an inclusive space for women?
Ooh, this one's so, I think, difficult because there are so many ways that we can make mistakes. And I think both men and women do. I myself have made many mistakes trying to, you know, create an inclusive space for women. I think first thing to do is really just identifying your privilege and identify gatekeeping that's going on. Sometimes we don't realize that something is happening until we sort of like step back and look at it and think about, you know, is this maybe like question that we're asking, or is this kind of like process that we're following, is it actually keeping people who maybe would have a lot of potential? Is that keeping them out? Or is that keeping people from not fulfilling their potential? And then once you've identified any, you know, privilege or any gatekeeping, finding ways to remove barriers and then spreading and sharing the privilege that you have with other people, right? Providing kind of more equity rather than just sheer equality. And so just some examples of, you know, just some simple things, like if you are a man or if you are a woman in some position of power, a simple thing that you can do is in meetings, providing space for, you know, the other women to voice their opinions, or actively going and, you know, like asking for people's opinions on particular projects that you're working on, things like that. Something that I did that was pretty effective was there is this like big engineering community in Japan called Dev Japan. And we saw that on the members lists, there were a lot of women, but for the events, the monthly events that were happening, there were very few women that would actually show up. And it was because they were, you know, they were interested, but they were a little intimidated because, you know, what happens at these events, be like 70, 80 men would show up and like be hacking together. And so what I did with the Dev Japan organizers was before the main event, like 2 hours before, we would have a women and non-binary only like coding session. And instead of announcing the start of the next event, we just had it like flow directly through. And so it ended up like all the women and non-binary folks would stay, and then it would make our main event just so much more diverse. Everyone would feel a lot more comfortable. The men would realize like, oh, there's women and this is really nice, like not having, you know, everyone being the same. And eventually like we kind of stopped doing the women, or we did it like less frequently, less consistently, but we didn't have to do it as consistently anymore because women were feeling a lot more comfortable going to the main event without, you know, starting out with the women only one. Another like kind of really simple solution was recently with a couple friends, we launched this database for women speakers called Speak Her. So it's like speaker, but with an H. And it was to tackle this pervasive excuse in Japan for manels, right? Manels are like men panels because they're like, oh, we couldn't find a woman expert on this. And so we really wanted, you know, a way to show like there are experts out there who happen to be women and they're just not getting the same opportunities, right? Because when you're looking for people on a panel, you typically try to find people within your network. So helping people diversify their networks and all of that was I think really important. And the project was just really simple in, you know, in explaining it. It was like it's a website with a list of women experts. Like that's really it. And we got a lot of publicity for that, just, because it hadn't been done. So I think there are a lot of really, creative and oftentimes easy ways to level the playing field and amplify the voices of women. I know that one of the biggest draws for me on coding boot camps is the fact that we can really level the playing field for women, right? In only a few months, we can get more women software engineers into the industry and see that direct impact. And especially when you're looking at a market like Japan, where, women software engineers are such a tiny fraction of the total. I think it's like 5%. Every woman that we're introducing into the marketplace adds so much value. So just finding, I think, creative ways to remove the gates that keep women, I think, down. And then also sharing your knowledge, sharing your privilege. Those are ways that we can get started with creating a more inclusive space.
It's so important. It's so important. And it's not something that, we all think about, but definitely the environment, it's the environment that helps nurture this movement, right? I have a lot more to say that, but with consideration of time, let's move on to our next lovely panelist and question. So Maggie, can you take it from here?
Yes, of course. So just reintroducing Christina Chi. I just wanted to, repeat what Christina said, and she's the founding partner at Dome Yard LP, and it's among the longest running high frequency trading hedge funds in the world, and CEO of Data Bento, a unified data platform. I was just so inspired by how, intelligent, strong, and welcoming Christina was. Incredible at telling stories and always shows such courage and wisdom. Brian and I also recorded an AHN podcast session with Christina on episode 4, talking about how she made her dorm room project into a hedge fund trading up to 7.1 billion USD dollars or USD daily. And additionally, Brian and I were just talking about how she's just so incredibly popular, releasing her new YouTube channel 2 weeks ago that has almost 10K views already, talking about how to start a hedge fund. So with that, Christina, I'd like to ask you the first question. How do you deal with discrimination and microaggressions?
Thank you so much, Maggie. You did me so much, I'm just so honored and I hope to live up to that for sure. In terms of microaggressions and discrimination, I think that's something that a lot of people, whether you're a woman or a man, right, no matter where you come from, it's something that everyone's experienced at some point, like some kind of, and just so you guys, and for those of you who aren't familiar with what a microaggression is, it's like when the person who's doing it has really good intentions, but it just makes you feel awkward. And especially for Asians, I think a big one is like, where are you really from? Where are you from? No, tell me, and they won't accept, I'm from Boston. And then I say, well, I grew up in Utah, and they just won't accept it until I tell them, oh, my grandparents were born in China. And then they're like, oh, ni hao, I'm like, and so that's a microaggression because they have really good intentions. They're like, oh, I've been to China once, but it just kind of makes you feel awkward because they're just asking about your, DNA, which maybe you don't feel comfortable answering in a professional setting sometimes. And so, yeah, I definitely go through that a lot. One of the big stories I like to tell is I speak a lot at conferences, and when I first started speaking, I was in New York, and there was a big event in the Schwartzman Library, which is like one of their biggest libraries in the city. And it was like a dinner setting table, so everyone's like sitting around tables. And I was going up to give like a talk up on stage, and I was walking up to the front, and this guy goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, we're done with our plates. Can you like clear our table for us?" And I like turned around, and he's like looking at me like expecting me to like be a waitress and take everything back to the kitchen. And I realized in that moment, oh crap, he thinks I'm like a waitress because I'm like Asian. My industry is very much, especially in America, it's very alpha male, white, tall, like you think of Warren Buffett, that kind of look in our industry. So obviously someone like me, it was like his first time seeing an Asian woman who wasn't a waitress, at these types of events. So I told him like, I'll take your plates as soon as I give my, keynote up on stage. And the whole table everyone just like laughed at him actually. And then afterwards he came up to me and he's like, I'm so sorry, like I that was, clearly wrong of me, and like, I'll treat you to dinner. I was like, just know like better next time, right? And he was like, yeah, you've taught me a lesson, and so thank you for being here and showing up and doing this, you know, we need more women. And I said, thank you. Yeah, please support, you know, the women in your lives and hire more women, et cetera. Right. And so I think it was a good lesson in terms of, I could have been angry. I could have been, you know, I could have yelled at him and like told his boss that he was discriminating, like, you know, but at the end of the day, right, it was like about teaching him that there are women who can do this and that's okay, and showing him and letting him learn, teach himself, like that this is, you know, that kind of behavior was wrong, and to make sure next time he flags a waitress to make sure they're actually working for the venue and not, you know, in a different position. So that happens a lot. I like to use humor a lot when I have microaggressions. So it depends on the situation, obviously, but like if someone says like, oh, Christina, your parents must be so proud of you. And like, you know, my co-founder as well is really young, and his parents, he has a really terrible relationship with his parents. His dad died recently, and he's just, you know, going through a lot. And so when people say that to him, he's kind of like, it makes him, you know, feel really bad as well. And so our response is kind of like, oh, thanks, Dale, your parents must be proud of you too, you know. And in that way, it kind of makes them think, oh crap, maybe I shouldn't have asked that, you know, in case, you know, it's just, for a setting like that, it might not be the right situation. But like sometimes people call me a kid a lot of times. And like when I don't know, I was interviewing like a board member for our fund, for instance. And like, yeah, he's like twice my age, but like he kind of, the phone goes, hey, sorry, I'm like, you know, talking to his kids right now, like, and referring to me as like a kid. And I was like, oh, thanks, dad, you know, and I called him dad because I'm like, you call me kid, I call you dad, you know, and that way it kind of points out that that is a microaggression, and it's something that, you know, shouldn't be happening in the workplace. But just kind of using humor, you know, depending on the situation, I think has helped me in terms of coping with it, but also helps them realize that what they're doing, you know, is inappropriate without me having to like be angry with them, and having them realize it themselves. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's for me how I've learned to kind of deal with it over time.
I love that. I love how you use humor and comedy, and you're just, it's a way for you to like alleviate the situation, because I feel like if we were to just like get angry and yell at them, or like mock them or something, they won't learn the lesson, you know. And for you to like use humor and for you to like kind of smooth out the situation, it makes them like think back like, oh, like maybe I did offend her, you know. I love that. All right, on to the next question. So are there any advantages to being a woman in your industry?
Oh man. Well, the industry is so like male, and so in America, at least, it's very Caucasian in terms of just the kind of people that are in this space. So I think the biggest advantage amongst all the discrimination and microaggressions that you get, you know, some of the good parts about it is like, you're extremely memorable when you're a woman in this industry. And you can be extremely memorable. People don't forget you. I've had people who met me from like 6 or 7 years ago when I first started the business, and I totally don't know who they are. I've totally forgotten them by now, you know, but they remember me because they're like, oh yeah, you're like, they called me, I don't know, at some point they called me like the queen of like high frequency trading or whatever. I have no idea, but like, you know, it's just like, it definitely helps in that sense that if you're the only one, you know, people remember who you are, and that's a good thing, you know. And I think also you teach like unique lessons in this space as well, and you can create spaces that are safe for other people to enter the industry too. So like, I don't know, one example is in this industry, there's a lot of kind of brokers who are, you know, brokers for, I guess, trading in general, but their culture on Wall Street is kind of like drinking still, and like cigar rolling, which was like the common activity. And so one time I was in Chicago, actually. I talked to a broker, and they're like, hey, do you want to go get drinks? And I was like, no, I want to go to the aquarium. And I just told them that. And so we ended up actually, he was like, okay, sure. That was weird, but because I don't like drinking, like getting wasted in a professional setting is just not for me. And so we went to the aquarium instead, and there's like all these kids, and it was fun. And then it turns out like a lot of his team members who are women joined as well. And they were like, thank you so much for doing this, because usually if it's drinking, I don't want to go. But because it's the aquarium, like I felt like it was inclusive to me, and I wanted to attend. And I was like, oh good, I'm so glad I'm not alone in this. Like, you know, there are other people out there who want to do the same thing as well. And so it just takes, you know, someone to propose something that's different, and you just kind of go out there and do it. And so I think you contribute as a woman, like you're welcome to kind of contribute your own ideas and thoughts in terms of even team activities. And oh, I guess another fun example is in my company as well, you know, we used to have like a lot of male employees. I'll be honest, we weren't very good with like diversity for some time. And that's something, that's bad and something that we should have been more aware of. But then we realized, like, after we started having a critical mass of women and started hiring more women, that the team activities also changed. And so there was like one woman who was like, hey, do you want to go grab like pedicures after work? And then this other girl on the team was like, yeah, sure, I want to do that. And then suddenly it became the cool thing, you guys. Like, the guys were all like, wait, I want to get pedicure too. Can I join too? And so we realized, like, it just takes two women to just suggest something. And then suddenly just the female, like traditionally female activity became like the cool thing on the team to do. And then now they just go get pedicures like every couple months or so. So yeah, like, it's totally possible. And for me also really empowering and inspiring to see other women be able to, create those kind of spaces and activities for people on their team.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that happens a lot in like the office space too, right? If someone doesn't speak up, I think it tends to influence other people to not speak up as well, because if it's not like no one's saying it, then I'm not going to say it. And, that trickles down to like a lot of issues in the workplace, like harassment or, like everything that goes around in that area. And I feel like because you spoke up, I just think it's super inspiring, because you inspired other women that were, surrounding you to speak up as well. And you just kind of created like this little movement within the women community. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing your insight, Christina.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie.
All right, and so we're moving on to our third panelist, Anya. And so Anya, just to give a quick recap, and she's a product management leader, growth marketing expert, and tech influencer. And Anya was named to a Girls in Tech 40 Under 40 list. She's a lecturer, an author, as well as a TED Talk speaker, many different roles, and a woman leader in tech. I connected with Anya through Asian Hustle Network as well, and was moved by how giving she was. And she's just always so willing to share her knowledge and teach others something that could be of use to them. And so incredibly sweet. And on top of that, she has a huge influence on social media with tens of thousands of followers. So Anya, with that, I'd like to ask you the first question. As a woman leader in tech, what are your suggestions for female leaders?
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. I want to share two stories and tell you guys a few suggestions on what we can do. One story was a few years ago when I was being the head of product for a tech company in the Valley. I was sent to a head of product global meetings in Netherlands. So I arrived there, we have a meeting, and in that meeting, we are supposed to find few product manager across globally in different countries to lead few projects. So one person say, hey, we should recommend blah, blah, blah. And that person is a lady. And quick right away, the other person say, no, she's pregnant. And I wasn't sure if I hear it loud and clear, because the Netherlands, and sometimes they have the accents, and I'm also not a native speaker. So I was like, must be that I hear wrong. It's not possible. And then in the end of the meeting, and someone did call out, say, hey, earlier in the meeting, someone say about this is really not appropriate. Please do not do that again. And there was the first time I personally experienced that someone could lose the opportunity just because she is a woman. Now a story to echo to previous, the Christina story. I do have a wonderful boss before, and he is very, very sensitive about inclusion. Yeah, but kind of do it in an interesting way. So we will go to the staff meeting where there's only leadership on the team can join. And then there were, of course, like 8 men, and I was the only woman on the team who are on the leadership team. So then he will invite additional person who are not leader and say, because we want to make sure we have inclusive, so we are inviting another 2 ladies on the team, even though they are not leaders. And you become really awkward because those person know that they are invited just because they are women. And it's also kind of weird for other people to, because they don't really have much role in that meeting. So it's just kind of awkward in the situation. But enough problem. Let me tell you a little bit about solutions. The first one is that a big barrier. Today our topic is about barrier. So the first barrier is that sometimes don't you feel like men, they hang out together and they just don't invite you, right? And how do we break it? So one thing is that research shows that men hang out after work, but women tend to hang out with non-coworker after works. So so as a result, men get a lot more gossip about work information after work. And as a result, of course, they got more potential promotion because they know what's going on in the office politics. So what's the solution? Meet with people who are not the same as you. So like Yan's story before, even though when we know there's a meeting, they are full of men, there's a party is full of men, try to join and meet with one person who you are not familiar with for lunch next week. As simple as that. Try to be in the place where you are a little bit unique, and it's okay. And second barrier, have you have a time in the meetings then when you say, yes, I think we should do la la la. And then after that, the other person, yes, I think we should do la la la. Exactly the same thing. And the next person, the person who say is a man, and people say, that's a great idea. How do you deal with that? Easy. The same thing as like the famous Obama amplify story. Then you have another woman say, hey, previously I heard Anya say about blah, blah, blah. I agree with that. I think that's great. Or I heard Yan may ask a question, which one was not being answered. Can we please more elaborate more about that? So amplify, team up. Like 1 + 1 is more than 2, right? And third barrier, have you have time that in the office, they say, hey, we need to do the onboarding meetings for some new hires. How about Anya, you do it? Oh, we need to do the party afterward. How about Anya, you help us to find the restaurant? Office housework, lots of them, right? Onboarding new hire, hosting diversity events, and doing this, taking notes in the meeting, lots of office housework. And these end up will pile up and reduce the time that you can focus on stuff that you make impact. How do we solve it? You just simply say, hey, how about we do some rotations? Here's a list of our 10 people on the team. I did it last week, which is great. Next week, how about Mike, you do that. The following week, Jim, you do that. And make a list. So then people have no excuse that they have to assign the work to you again. The next barrier, when I was at Facebook, there was a story. I was transitioning the team between marketing to the product management team. And so I reached out to more than hundreds of a product manager and product directors, say, hey, can you do some market interview for me? I reach out more women than men, but end up that 80% of people who say yes are men. Those women who say no, they all answer exactly the same reason. Oh, I don't think I'm qualified to coaching other people. Yeah, I am. Yes, I did pass the interview, but I'm not really be a trainer or coach or teacher. I'm not qualified. We all have a time. We have a small voice in our head and say, you're not qualified. You are not qualified. You are not qualified. How do we solve it? You shut it down when it's really small. You're not qualified. No, I am. I'm okay. Right? But when you get louder and louder, it's really hard to shut it down. So shut it down when it's really small. Last things will be when you have some technical thing. I love Yan's story about how they leave women in the beginning of the meeting so they stay. The same thing here. Have you noticed in staff meeting in the end, when you say, who want to ask question? No one asked question. And then right away, they were one person asked question, then tons of people ask question. Have you noticed if you don't have a first person being not a woman ask question, the rest of the questions are not going to come from women. But if you have first person ask question as a woman, the rest of the question will be probably even. So at Facebook, what we did is we asked the first question, leave it to a woman. And after that, we open to everyone. And the same thing for interview. We ask the last round of interview have to be as someone who is minority, maybe a woman with maybe African-American, maybe Asian American, but the the panels in the interview have to be one minority. And those were techniques to solve the problem.
Love it. Thank you so much, Anya. I think going back to your point earlier, I think there's a term for that. I think it's like similarity bias. We tend to look for suggestions and agree with people who like look like us or are alike us, right? And I think there's a lot of bias that goes on with that. And I love all those solutions. I think that in order to create inclusion inside, your company or the workplace or wherever, you have to think outside the box and like grab suggestions and grab feedback from people who don't look similar to us, right? And I think that could create a lot of inclusion. All right, next question for Anya. What challenges have you had as a women leader in tech, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, let me tell you a story back in time in 2008. It was a time similar to today, is a big reception. I just got my master's degree from Northwestern University. I barely spoke any English at the time. I volunteer in elderly center right next to school just to practice English because I didn't want to do the trade. I didn't want to teach anyone Chinese. So then I volunteered there. It was time everyone said there's no job anywhere. So I wasn't able to find any job in my department or even get into any interview because I actually didn't have much in the marketing background before the school. So then first thing I did I went to our MBA, the management school. So they have 8,000 people, 800 people graduate every year, which is 10 times more than my department. So then I wait outside the building. Whenever someone come out, I say, hey, I know you are interviewer. I am not this department student. But this is my resume. There's lots of people say you're great, but no one ever actually give me a real interview. So then I reach out to professors, and I realized in my department, everyone is graduating at the same time. So the professor were overwhelmed. Everyone asked them the same question: can you refer me someone? So the professor said no. Then I reach out, say, how about this? Let me reach out to the professor, which is in another department, because they don't have students graduating at this time. So they have plenty of time. So I reach out to each of them, and I found a person. The person say, I'm not going to introduce anyone. I don't know you. But tomorrow I have a panel on Zoom. No, not on Zoom. But I have a panel on live streaming. No, not live streaming. But you have a panel at school. You can come to come to listen to a lecture. I went there, listen to a lecture. I write down I found the email from the panelists beforehand. I emailed the panelists and beforehand. And after the speech, even though I couldn't understand a thing because our English was so bad, I went there and say, hi, Peggy, you did a wonderful job on the presentation. Here's my resume. Can I talk to your team? She said, I'm not hiring, but if you want just networking, I'm happy to introduce you to someone. After the interview, I think it's a great company. It's a media company. I was a reporter before. It's perfect. They have marketing transformation. I think it's perfect. A few weeks went on. I called the HR person. HR person say I was laid off. Please do not call me again. So then I think, okay, if I want a job in the media industry, which was there at the time, I was like, how about this? I went to New York and LA, which were the two areas has kind of more jobs and more media jobs. I contact hundreds of alumni and from like different type of even newspaper. I open New York Times and I see the email say like ads at newyorktimes.com. I email them. Eventually they transfer forward my resume, and I met with CEO. Everyone say you are great, but we are not hiring. Actually, I'm looking for a job. Do you know someone? Because we are laying off people. So I came back to Chicago. I was like, hey, that company earlier, the small magazine company who I visit, how about that in those two city, when I visit people, I have tons of insights. I'm sure they will be helpful to hear what CNN is doing and New York Times is doing for this small magazine company. So I did a business plan, I summary of the inside, and I wrote down a plan, say, hey, you can actually launch a new department doing all of these activities. And I know someone who seems to fit into the criteria for someone who did do these activities for you. Me. So I went there, I have 15 minutes. I present my business plan. They asked me, okay, do you want to come to as a contractor? I didn't know what contractor mean. When I went home, I Googled it. Contractor said plumbings. I thought it was like, why would she want to hire me as a plumbing? But that's how I got my first job in the US. And the whole reason why I say about this story is that as a woman, we have a lot of resilience. Use them. Use them. When someone say no, find another way. It doesn't need to be pretty and wonderful and smart way. It could be just small thing. But when you pile up for 500 small things, it's like the egg, the chicken inside the egg. Pum, 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 pum. Eventually it break. You ask me which time was the break happen? I don't know. It was 450 times, 451 time. I don't know. But when this keep happening, eventually it will happen.
Thank you so much, Anya. That was so inspirational. And I see a comment from Yan in the chat that, you know, you're fearlessly persistent, and I absolutely agree. I think that a lot of people feel like, you know, they can get overnight success, right? And they quit after, you know, experiencing failure for the first time. And you were just persistent the whole way through. Of course, like we all have our struggles, and I'm sure there were moments where you felt like you were defeated. We all do at some points, right? But what's great about you is like you just kept going, and you were completely persistent, and you fearlessly, you know, took the head on and just continued and just kept going. And I love that about you. All right. Well, we had our 2 questions for all of our panelists. And so Steffi and I are going to open up the audience Q&A. So I see that we have a lot of questions that came in through the Q&A. So I will let Steffi to start off with the audience Q&A.
Keep sending us your questions, people. If you have a specific question for one of our panelists, please mention that in the question on Zoom or on Facebook. We will get those as well. There's a lot of really good questions that were coming in. Let's see. As a man with a woman co-founder, I have often effortlessly put her voice forward more than mine. But sometimes I feel like I'm putting myself more down to put her up, being equal partners. What is something more men could be doing to be putting more women forward, but also being a strong co-founder on their own? This is a very interesting question. Could we have Christina speak on this?
Sure, why not? I feel like, and I do the same thing for my own co-founders, by the way, as well. Like, this is like the most dumbest example ever. And I know this is super privileged. When Forbes reached out to me and they're like, can you make like whatever Forbes list it was? I was like, I don't want to make the list unless you put my co-founders on the list too, who are both male, by the way. And so I think it kind of goes both ways, right? And I think I never put myself down by, you know, bringing people up. You don't put yourself down by doing that. I think you bring everyone up, and they, you know, by result bring you up as, you know, a result as well. And so I hope that's the case in most industries where, you know, by putting other people forward and bringing their voices out there as well, that, you know, you gain something as well, and that you don't, hopefully don't like lose an opportunity, for instance. You know, when it comes to speaking opportunities as well, like sometimes I'm just not the best fit for it. So I give it to my other co-founder somewhere, you know, who would be better suited for that. And that's fine, you know, so it just depends. But I think that at the end of the day, it's not like a winner take all kind of industry, hopefully. Like it's more of a, you know, you can help each other out, and there's enough of a pie to share with everyone out there in terms of rewards and awards and whatever, you know, opportunities that you're looking for. So hopefully that helps you kind of see the picture a different way. And I hope that also that your female co-founder will, you know, be able to help you as well in return for whatever, you know, that you guys should both be helping each other, I guess, along the way. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Christina. All right, we have another question from Anonymous. What are your thoughts on the stereotype that Asian women tend to be more complacent or quiet? And how do you deal or defy with that stereotype? I will let Yan answer this one.
Yeah, we do have that stereotype of being complacent and quiet. And we also have a stereotype of being like really strict, like dragon lady, angry, right? So I think, yeah, like it's really just them trying to give an excuse if they don't like how you're acting, right? Or if they don't like how you're being too quiet in a meeting, or if you aren't quiet and you're voicing your opinions, they will put you in another bucket. So I think that's really just what that stereotype is doing. They're just trying to put you in a nice little box so that they can feel better about themselves. And it's stripping away you as a person, and it's just seeing you as like a stereotype. So that's really my thoughts on it. How I deal or defy that stereotype, I just don't think about it. I think, yeah, if I have something to say, I have something to say, and if I don't, then I don't. I think like I try not to think of that stereotype too often. I've gotten both the, you know, quiet and the dragon lady stereotype. You know, in finance, I was sometimes too quiet around the office. And then I was also, you know, being a little bit too angry or like loud or like whatever in meetings. So it's really just like, what do you want me to do? There is no, you know, if I'm trying to like appease everyone and fit into like their nice little impression of who I am, then I would never really get to be me and find my own voice.
Love it. I just wanted to touch on that too. I think I see online like a bunch of ads that talk about, you know, the expectations of women, and, you know, we can never please anyone, right? Or please everyone. And it's like either like you're too quiet or you're too outspoken. It's like one way or the other. It's like we're bound to get complaints of like how we act. So why don't we just act honestly and authentically? And it's like, why don't we just be ourselves? So thank you, Yan.
You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So
Exactly.
be authentic.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to our next question. So this is from Annie Sue. Hi, first want to thank all of you for sharing your experiences with us. Recently, I've had several mock interviews with my career coach, and she said my biggest problem is the lack of confidence. And I would like to know how to build confidence. Let's call on Anya for this one. Some confidence tips, please.
Confidence tips. I think so. I think sometimes we tend to give ourselves too much pressure. Have you have time, you will say, I think I should. Maggie just did before the meeting. I should put on my lipsticks, right? Yes, I should write a book. Like I was like, oh, I should probably check out Christina's YouTubes. Oh, I should. Next time, don't say I should. Say I would like to. I would like to put the lipsticks on. I would like to what? You know what? Because when we were giving ourselves a lot of pressure, we are trying to say you are bad. Negative. I should means you are bad. You are not doing that. But I would like to. This will make me feel what? I would like to put on lipstick because then it will make me feel looks like beautiful. And so then I will feel great and I'm going to do it tomorrow. Is it feel more positive?
Yeah, that is awesome. That is a really good tip. I would like to, or I will. Let's make it even stronger.
I also really like the like, why not me question. You know, if someone gives you some cool opportunity or some cool idea, like, why not me? Like, why not you to do that, right?
Yeah, love it. And I think it also goes back to like auto suggestion. I think if you like suggest something about yourself every day, you're bound to believe in it, right? And I think we do need those little reminders sometimes, like I can do this or I will do this. And if you repeat it to yourself and like believe it to a certain extent, like you will go and do it because you don't want to disappoint yourself too, right? All right, let's move on to the next question. I'm selecting one right now. So this is from Anonymous. How do you get people within organizations who aren't always on board with diversity and equity practices, e.g. naysayers, those who don't see their privilege, involved or convinced that it's important? I'll let Christina take over this.
Sure. So for me, we've dealt with quite a few people actually in both a work setting as well as like at conferences who basically have told me stuff like, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's 2020, right? Where like that was like 100 years ago when like slavery was around, but like there's no such thing as racism. And I think that's because they don't like see it in their own lives and they've never really experienced it. And you can't really, it's hard for them to like be in someone else's shoes. You know, I can kind of empathize on that level. Like if they've never walked in the shoes of a Black person, a tiny Asian woman, you know, it's hard for them to really understand what that's like. And so a couple of the biggest things that I like to do is like even just spending time with them in, you know, in the work setting and like getting to know these people better and showing them like, you know, I tell them my waitress story and they're like, holy crap, that happens. And I'm like, yeah, it happens. And you know, it's called a microaggression. And I kind of introduce these types of things that do happen. And it helps to kind of open their minds a little bit to these things. But I think the other thing that's also important for, I think, everyone to understand is like, it's not your job to educate like everyone in the world, right? And that's okay. okay. There are always going to be people who will always say like that racism doesn't exist, or like that you're privileged as an Asian woman or whatever race you are, that you're like privileged, you know, to be that. And I wish I could be like you instead. But like the reality is everyone kind of faces, you know, discrimination, microaggressions, and that's, you know, something that we kind of each deal with. But at the same time, it's not our job to like educate everyone out there if we don't want to. And it's up to you, each of you, to kind of set your own boundaries. It just comes down to boundaries. Like I'm okay with educating people up on stage or at events and sharing these stories. Now it's up for everyone else to, once they hear the story, how are you going to react to it? You know, how are people going to do better in the world? And so that's up to each person. At the end of the day, I can't control how they think or feel, but I can just kind of share insights and also just have a diverse group of friends, hire diverse in the company as well, so that for instance, like when we do potlucks and stuff like that, like the food is like really, it's not just sandwiches, you know, it's like a lot more than that. And so just making sure that people kind of experience different cultures and stuff, I think has been really eye-opening for everyone, including myself. So hopefully that's one way to kind of help. You know, unfortunately, I think, again, it's not your job. You know, if you have a manager, for instance, who's just not on board, you know, sometimes the best thing to do is actually just switch companies if you can, you know, switch to a better environment. If you dread waking up every morning and dread going to work, you know, it's a sign that, and that's okay to switch companies. You know, the average millennial, I don't know which generation you are, but like I'm a millennial, the average millennial has 17 different jobs before retirement. And that's normal, you guys. Like there's nothing wrong with them. I know our parents' generation, like my parents, my dad has had the same job for like 30 years. And like, I get that that was cool back in the 70s, you guys, but like, this is 2020, okay? Like the gig economy is huge right now. So it's okay to switch around, and you do have the freedom to look around and the right to look for a better position if you want to. So yeah, just know that you have many options in front of you.
Thanks, Christina. I absolutely agree. Like my father, he's been at the same company for over 40 years. I'm like, how do you do it? And I feel like millennials, we get bored so easily that we're like, oh, I'm bored of this company. But I absolutely agree with you. You know, we can do our part to educate, and it's important for us to educate. But at the same time, we've done our part. And of course, like we can continue to educate, but it's really up to the person to, you know, absorb and collect that information in a way that they want to, and really, you know, do their part in educating themselves. Yeah. All right, I think we're at top of the hour, but we have like so many good questions coming in. Do you guys mind going over like maybe 5 minutes? Yeah, okay.
Extend a little bit.
All right.
Questions. We have one from Jenny Lim for Yan. I love the thought and work behind Speak Her. Are you thinking of expanding to other areas?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so Speaker was really just a side project that my friends and I decided to do for fun. And we've certainly talked about it, but and we hope to, but I think it being a side project, we're maybe a little bit further away from that than we would like, but I really hope that we can expand. The engineering that we did was kind of just Japan centric, but yeah, that's something that we certainly want to do. There are similar initiatives going on, but I think they're all very like kind of industry driven, whereas Speaker is really focused on like any industry. So yeah, I hope to be able to bring it to a country near you.
Right. And for those of you who are tuning in from Japan, if you're a woman, you want to speak, just submit yourself or someone you know into the directory. Yeah.
Same. All right, let's move on to the next question. So I have another one from Anonymous. How do you deal with women on workforce/team that don't get along with you, especially in a male-dominant industry? Parentheses, medicine. I'll let Anya take this away.
Sure. Being a woman in tech in Silicon Valley, we constantly have people surrounding us similar to Christina. They are quite different from us. But I would say it's really hard to fix someone's weakness, but then focus on their strengths. You know, like try to see if you can form an environment where they can leverage their strengths. Tell you a story. When I was working for Target, I had an engineer. I was new to the company. I joined them to help them to launch a Silicon Valley office. So my job was to build out their mobile e-commerce and tablet e-commerce in 9 months, including hiring people in Silicon Valley, which you know how hard is it, especially for a retailer, not for tech company. So my colleague say, hey, Anya, I heard you are hiring. I have a paper engineer on my team. I think he will probably good to have you start. So then you have someone inside the company right away. I said, great. I took it. I come back to my team. My team's like, you're screwed. You're so screwed. They were trying to get rid of the guy for years. Now you just take the hot potato on the team. You're so screwed. I have two choices. I can go back to my colleague and say, you lied to me. I want to return this guy. Or I can figure out a way to leverage the person's strengths. So I talked to everyone who worked with the engineer. I found that engineer is actually pretty good on the technical side, but the engineer is pretty bad in project management. Whatever he say, how much time would take it, never true. So then I decided to do two things. One is that I pair with this guy to a Scrum Master who is really good in project management. So then the engineer never need to do anything related to project management, even though the engineer is still an engineer leader. And second thing is I brought him to a lot of leadership meeting. You're like, you're weird. He is like the doghouse in the doghouse. Why would you bring him to meeting with VP? Because if he's good in technically, then he understands business sense and business context. He can help me to make good decision. So then in a few months, he became our superstar. He helped us to launch our mobile tablet app. In the 9 months, we make 1 million incremental per day, and we won the Webby Award and now the 11 Award. And I have to say, part of the reason was because he was on my team.
Amazing. Thank you, Anya, for sharing that. All right.
Great. Should we have one more question or?
I think we can do one more question.
One more question.
All right, we'll do one more question.
All right. Right. Let's see. How can we, this is from anonymous attendee, how can we deal with benevolent sexism in our career beginning? This is quite prevalent in Japan. I see the tasks for women are predetermined, irrespective of skills. Can I actually divert this to Christina?
Yeah, sure. So I was one of the few women on the trading floor in Japan when I had worked there. And I totally know what you mean by benevolent sexism. It was people had good intentions, but they don't even realize what they're doing. They'll be like, oh, Christina, you take notes. You can be the secretary again today. You can be the coffee. They call me the coffee girl because I would grab coffee all the time. And then at some point I realized, like, wait a second, you know, it's today, let's do the, like Anya's suggestion of rotations. Let's do rotations. And so I actually suggested rotations and then decided to pass it off to other people. And then they realized at some point, oh yeah, that's okay. You know, it's my turn to grab coffee today and to do that kind of role. And so just realizing that you do have the power to suggest your own ideas. And then if they say, no, I don't want to grab coffee, then you'd be like, oh, well, then how, you know, I'm busy today, I have to finish this task. How can I grab coffee for you? Just ask how can I do this for you right now? Possibly, because I can't, I have to be, you know, have my other tasks I need to do. And so just kind of realizing and learning how to ask the right questions in a really friendly, polite way help to kind of mitigate those kinds of issues and help them realize, like, oh crap, you know, she's busy and that she has a lot of work to do too. That's really important, and not just like grabbing coffee or taking notes or you know, a lot of guys will ask me questions in the workplace, like, where are you from and stuff like that too. And I just kind of, you know, will either I'll just be like China, because I know they want to know that I'm just from China and just get it over with, or sometimes I'll just be like, okay, we can chat after work about, you know, where we're both from, and I would love to know where you're from too, even though I know they're Japanese. But still, like, it's just puts the question on them and makes them like think a little bit that, oh wait, they need to answer the question too as well. And yeah, hopefully that answer is okay. Actually, Yan, I'm curious from you if you have any thoughts on that as well, since you work in Japan too.
Oh yeah, I mean, the only I think I'm lucky in that, like, I'm at my own company and I'm not working in like a larger, you know, a larger organization. So it doesn't happen to me as frequently. But I think, Christina, you put it really well. Like, the only way that you can fight this off really is to just counter it with some humor and try to let them sort of see it in like that silly light that you view it. Because if you, I think, if you react back in like kind of a negative way, oftentimes the person on the other end doesn't know, like they're just not aware that they, are, that they are being like microaggressive. And so I think countering that with like a really more like aggressive, negative tone just doesn't help your situation. So the best thing is to just be funny. Yeah.
Can I chime in for a story? So when I was at Facebook, one day there was the boss assigned me to say, hey, we have this the week of short weeks, and we need to do some meeting, and then Anya, you need to assign do entertaining works for the team, so there will be some entertaining among the boring meeting for 5 days. And then I assigned it to someone on my team, and he's a guy, and I was like, just do whatever, kill the time. And I told him like the night before, just do whatever, like writing, jumping around, and we go to coffee shop to grab coffee or come back, whatever, just kill time. And then he came back. He asked, so he said, hey, today we're going to play some questions. So we will separate to the team. There will be like 3 teams, and we'll ask different questions. And the question were like trivias. So, and the question trivia were related to the team. For example, I was in the connectivity. So he will ask like, how many people are online here in India today? And then like the team will play question. And in the end, he gave everyone a book. And the book was called Factfulness, which was a book talking about we all have bias, etc. And he did so well. Like all the leadership was so impressed. And after that, they asked me like, who is the guy on your team? He did great for this meeting. So sometimes don't think of this as dirty work. It could be a chance for you to shine, right? Because everyone's there, they see how you handle it, and you are the boss for the meeting, how you use it.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your insight.
Yeah, we are 10 minutes over, but yeah, we've had so many questions. Thank you everyone for sending them. If you still want to ask your questions to our panelists, you can reach out to them. We'll have a slide later where you can connect. Yes, just wanted to say thank you. We had such an impressive lineup of female go-getters, Yan, Christina, Anya. I wanted to say thank you to Asian Hustle Network. Thank you, Brian, Maggie, the marketing team, and special shout out to Jimmy Quach and events. We couldn't have done this without you. Super, super organized. Thank you to my team at Startup Lady Japan for helping promote this event as well. And thank you to all of you for attending. Like this event is for you, and I hope that ladies, from all this experiences that we've heard from these wonderful women, learn to speak back to your I can't. Tell yourself, I can instead of I should. Speak up for yourself, for other women, and creates a safe space for women. And that's how we can break barriers in our industry. That's how you can make impact. Right. Before the last slide, I wanted to just briefly explain Startup Lady Japan. So we are also, if you are a woman or a person, a non-binary, and you want to start up a business in Japan, please feel free to join our group. We start this 60-day startup challenge every once in a while, and we're about to start one next month. So please go ahead and join us. And thank you, hustlers. Thank you, everyone. Please reach out to us and the panelists if you have any more questions. And thank you so much.
Yeah, so we'll be sharing all of the call to actions and ways to get in touch with our panelists through social media, via email if you registered for this event. But wanted to thank all of our panelists, Yan, Christina, Anya, and Steffie, Startup Lady Japan, for co-hosting with us, and to all of our attendees for attending this event. Thanks, everyone. All right. Bye.
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 Thanks for joining, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays for people in Taiwan. Eat more mooncakes.
Oh, yes. More mooncakes.
I want to pretend myself in Silicon Valley. It's a holiday tomorrow. It's not.
Yes, and if you'd like to share your social media on the chat as well, please feel free to do that. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks,
Bye.
Jojo. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Christelle. All right.
Thank you. All right, it's a wrap.
All right, it's all right.
Are we still live on Facebook?
I think we are. Oh.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone.